two minds about covering these subjects because I want to, right? I feel like I have a perspective, not that anyone even watches this stuff, but I just feel like I need to express myself about certain things, right? And then there's just this, like, this stuff makes me really, really, really depressed, right? And the inhumanization of all of it, like the dehumanization, the politicization of everything, where you're supposed to view this stuff like this, like humans are not actually involved in all of this, right? Like when you see the video, it's just it's a disturbing thing. And one thing I meant to do more research on, because this is just what I saw, and who knows? I mean, I've talked about my depression on this podcast, referenced it a little bit. I could be projecting a little bit. I hope not, right? But when I saw the video, especially when I saw it the second time, I couldn't help but to wonder, especially then finding out that the brother Walter Wallace had bipolar disorder. And I've not seen this theory, at least that I've seen, if you've seen it. But for all we know, was that how do I put this? A self-ending via cop. That's something I wondered personally watching that. Because when he makes an advance, I'm not going to play that video, not just because YouTube will ban me, and I'm sure in this podcast I'm going to say enough to get suppressed by the good old machine learning algorithms. But when I saw the video and he makes this advancement and then he slows down, I'm like, is he trying to entice them to do action? And he apparently had been called multiple times throughout the day, or the police have been called, I should say, multiple times throughout that same day on him, and that he was having a mental health issue. And my opinion of, I really would like, because with a lot of these incidents, whether it's this, whether it's Daniel Prude, whether it's Tony Tempa, whether it's George Floyd, you do wonder if there was a mental health / substance abuse team, in addition to, not in lieu of. I'm not, even though I'm not a back the blue guy, and I'll get into tons of reasons why, I don't necessarily think, I'm not a defund the police guy either. I think that's a bad idea. And I'll talk about that as well. But I really do wish there were other people who were better at assessing mental health, in addition to the police. Not necessarily in lieu of. And that's a clear distinction. I definitely think, in general, especially when you say these lockdowns, mental health is going to be a huge problem for this country going forward. It already has been the past really 50 to 70 years, and it's been progressing and getting worse and worse and worse in all communities. I just realized my kettlebell is visible. I'm sure people are thinking, like, you should use it more. I digress. In all communities, mental health has been diminishing, and this is outside of whether or not the shooting is justified. There's a lot of layers, and I'll get to those later. But I couldn't help but to think about the mental health layer, because I wonder, did he end himself via cop, which does happen, by the way. And that's sad if the brother did, and he was having mental health struggles, which this lockdown has caused a lot of. And then, of course, I hate determining justify and not justify, right? Because I don't like the police, right? And I don't like the government. I don't like the government killing people ever. No, I do think that was a justified killing by the laws of the land, right? I do think because he was advancing towards the police that they had the right to protect themselves via using their weapons. However, that doesn't mean I necessarily like a guy getting shot 10 times for having a mental health episode, which is again why I said it would be nice if there was a mental health team in addition to the police to assess that situation. In addition to, not just out there by themselves. I don't want, a couple of skinny suburban tween looking Caucasian kids out there like, okay, guy with a knife, we're going to help fend you off with our clipboard. I mean, I don't think that's going to work. But if you had people who could assess, like, man, I think this guy is on a substance, or I think this guy is this, we should do a totally different tactics. And it will be some ironing out. And you do need them to be aware that there's danger, potential danger. But I think there's a lot of calls where if you had someone else in addition, like I said, I'm not just talking about this incident. I'm talking about the Daniel Prude incident where he was he was on PCP, yes. But he was tied up and they held his face down. There was really no justification for that, right? And that gets lost because of all the rioting, which we'll get into. All the rioting and all the violence and all the justification for violence, which I'm going to dispel. But some of these incidents still have gray area. You know what I mean? Even the George Floyd, he was on fentanyl. And if you see the body cam incident, you see that he was having issues breathing even before. That doesn't necessarily, and actually those charges were dropped and there was no real talk about it. Isn't that crazy? They just move on to the next thing because this is never about a black life. It's never about a black man ever. But I digress. Chauvin shouldn't have had his knee on his neck. And you wish there were people to say, okay, if they just had him handcuffed in a sitting position and he should happen to have the issues that he had, you should have had some water with me. I may even pause after the story and get some water. But if he should then have the issues he had and would have still passed on, this wouldn't have been this international incident. But because he decided to do what he did, he caused this viral video that has caused untold damage when you talk about all the riots. All the people who've lost their lives due to the defunding of the police. Where these communities have violence. You may even see, I think I'm blocking it. And actually, I'll get to it when I get to the story, but I have a story that I'm going to cover about all the children that died in Philadelphia. This is well before this incident with Walter Wallace. Well before that, just as of August, how many children have passed by shooting. Or necessarily they got shot. I'm sorry. It's not how many passed, but how many got shot. It's not just the civil unrest. It's not just 100+ days in Portland, Oregon, the most Caucasian major city in the United States. It's not just that. It's the fallout from that when now there's less police calls in these areas. There's less police in these areas. And I meant to have a video queued up with a woman calling police coons and all this other stuff. Because what are you here for? What are you here for? Yet, literally, as I'll get into, maybe just get into it now. Look at this. 100 children. Let me move myself. 100 children have been shot in Philadelphia so far this year as of August 6th. That means they've had a couple months. It's November 1st now. They had the whole month of August, whole month of September, whole month of October, including now with the riots. To add to that total of 100 children in Philadelphia alone who were shot. We know about children in Chicago, nationwide, Atlanta, my home city, Detroit. People and kids being shot because of lawlessness. Do their lives matter? Look at this rioting. Let me get to another story in this. 30 officers injured because of riots. This is as of the 27th. And there's tons of video on it. I'm not going to show all the videos. And like I said, there's things. Why didn't they use a taser? That's one thing. Walter Wallace Sr. said. They publicized that, right? And that's you can determine there's people who have been able to fight off tasers. Okay. But you can ask that question. But here's another question. Ellie Russian, you publicized this. Did you publicize them denouncing the violence? Believe it or not, there have been even chapters of Black Lives Matter that have denounced violence, and they're never publicized. All these families who say this is not going to bring our kid back or this isn't going to solve anything, it's just lawlessness, they're never publicized. You have women, you had, like I said, the young lady screaming, "What are y'all here for? What are you here for?" Are you yelling every time one of these babies get shot in your city, sis? Because if you're not, then what are you there for? This is insane. And it doesn't bring this man back. And again, no one has even asked this man who had 7 children, who had felonies, unfortunately, had a past, whose family had called the police because of his mental health issues multiple times. That's why I attack, because I struggle with mental health myself. And as a black man with mental health issues, you just, as anyone with mental health issues sort of knows, you kind of just, you're neglected by society. So if this man did end himself via cop, that question will never be answered because no one really cares enough to ask it. When one of these incidents happens, with the black man gets killed by police, whether it's justified or not, everybody just looks at it as an opportunity to get free stuff, not just the looters, and not just the, people who are going in stealing flat screen TVs for racial justice, not just the Claire Craver types who come out the suburbs and burn down black businesses. No. But the political commentators, all the Talcum X types who get the follows and get people on Instascam and Shitter to follow and thumbs them up. They all benefit off it, even the people on the right. And I hope I'm not guilty of it. Luckily, I don't have enough platform to be accused of being guilty of it. But even still, everyone just wants publicity and stuff for their thing. Oh, this is justified. Back to blue, back to blue. I'm not going to back to blue. Let me get into a little story, my little cool down story for this. I'm not going to defund them either. I think those are both crazy thoughts because I'm worried about authoritarian government as a result of all this unrest. I don't want authoritarian government. I don't want liberties to be crushed out. There are people who are trying to get rid of the Second Amendment. And even outside of that, there are people who are discouraging the use. The man who defended his business and then ended up ending himself. He defended his business, but because the assailant was a black man and it was a white guy, it was somehow wrong. And it's like, people have to defend their lives. And then he ends up dead. He ends up potentially it looks like he ended himself, even though there was people who questioned that. I'm not going to get into that. It's another story for another day. But all this unrest, and nobody really cared about Walter Wallace. Unfortunately, no one really cares about these names. They say these names as a way of spamming, as a way of getting clout, and as a way of being as a part of the crowd. And that's not to say it's not people who genuinely want change or what they perceive to be change. And I realize my other hand is not in. Just both. Okay. Got them both in frame. But there's too much disingenuousness. That's not even say the word, but there's too much disingenuous actors, and there's too much spinning of narrative with no regard for the actual violence. And I want to address something before ending this story. Marianne Williamson, no relation. She was a former Democratic presidential candidate, and she justified the night of riots in Philadelphia by claiming that there's nothing in the Bible that tells people not to steal. This is why, and this person again was a Democratic presidential candidate. She said there are people in this country more concerned about a Walmart being looted than an innocent man being killed. Many of them tout the Bible. Thou shalt not loot is not in there, but thou shalt not kill sure is. Thou shalt not steal is in there, and that's pointed out. But then she says, of course, by point about the priorities remain the same. So I have to address this idiotic is just property argument. Firstly, as previously said, it's not just property. There's a lot of violence that's happened directly from these riots. There are people who die in these riots. There are people who got shot in these riots. There was even a story about somebody who got robbed for all the stuff that he took from all the places he looted. But there's violence against police. There's violence against other looters. Looters, I think there's the first night was 11 shooting, looter on looter shooting. These peaceful protests. It's not just property being smashed. So even in this, utopian insurance where the insurance will pay for everything, which doesn't happen like that. It rarely happens like that, if at all. But even in that sort of environment, people are losing their lives in these riots. Citizens on all sides, I'm not even going to say both, or just people who live in these areas, people are getting hurt. It's not just property that's happening in these riots. Human beings are getting hurt, and an additional loss of life is happening in the riots themselves, let alone the fallout, let alone the destruction that's going to happen to these communities long term. A lot of it's made of my city. I got the Red Wings on the hat. A lot of people kind of use my city as some dystopian nightmare. Oh, it'll become Detroit. Ha ha ha. Fuck you, by the way. I love my city, even though currently I don't live there, which I kind of doxed myself on that. Living in the South now, and I'm planning on even moving further south, believe it or not, but that's another story. My point is, the riots in the 60s were a key role in one of the damaging things in Detroit, along with a lot of other things. A lot of things that don't get talked about. People always talk about white flight, which is a huge thing, but people don't talk about people like me who move into the middle class and then move out of the area. That happens too. It's like a slow black trickle for anyone who does get into a middle class situation, who gets out of that situation and instead moves to another city for either more opportunity. No one really talks about that effect on communities. And trust me, that is going to impact a lot of these cities that face these riots as well. But every one of these cities that has these riots, it's just property, are going to face damage to their reputation and to their infrastructure because of these riots. Because people, again, using my city as the example, there was a time, for the longest time when I was growing up, a lot of businesses were not in the city of Detroit because they were afraid of being in the city of Detroit. And now Philadelphia, a city that 100 children were lost in a year, which that was only as of August when I had those numbers by that article I had earlier. 100 children. Now with riots. This is why you worry about Walmart being looted, because now Walmart's not there. What happens to those jobs, Marianne Williams? Are you going to hire them? You don't even read the damn Bible that you're trying to judge people on. And it's not even the 10 Commandments is like the pop songs of the Bible. You know what I mean? What I'm trying to think. I Want to Hold Your Hand by the Beatles. Like it's the most popular song from that. But it's Purple Rain. You know what I'm saying? Even if you don't know the Bible, you know the 10 Commandments. And you can't even do that. So it's a mess. And the other argument against the "it's just stuff," let's just say all that stuff was out of it, and it wasn't this great loss of life, and it wasn't this great economic impact because of all the destruction. What in the world does destroying things do for racial justice? Again, that's taking all the economic impact of the big corporations not wanting to be there, the small black businesses that get destroyed, you know what I mean? Black and brown businesses get destroyed. Who cares about them? Because Black Lives Matter? That makes no sense. But let's take that out of it. How does destroying buildings and looting get racial justice? Especially when we're literally telling people, there's literally videos out there of people calling black police coons. So we don't want more black police, apparently. A black police is a turncoat. What do we want to do to police these communities? And by the way, a lot of these shootings, people are getting their family are calling the police on them. Daniel Prue had his family call the police on him, and Walter Wallace had his family call the police on him. Yes, I think we need a mental health team to go out there with our police, not in lieu of our police, but with our police to help diminish these situations. And I think that needs to be addressed instead of just saying, is this shooting justified? Because yes, officers have the right to defend themselves. But I think that is a non-zero chance that this was a ending by cop. Self-ending by cop. Suicide by cop. I'll just say it. And that is not going to be addressed because who cares about the mental health of the black man? No one does, man. No one. And I'm not saying there's some racialists. To be fair, I don't think people care about mental health in general of anyone. But all these people who want to claim Black Lives Matter, want to say all this stuff in the name of every time a black man gets killed, whether it's justified or not, none of them care about black men in general outside of that. They'll be the same ones to shame a black man for not thinking how they want him to think. And it's disingenuous garbage, and I'm tired of it. So no, it's not just property. Yes, it's okay to worry about the lives of all the people who are going to be impacted by just the economics of these riots. P.S. Human beings have lost their lives in these riots and been shot and injured in these riots. So it isn't just property being damaged. It's people being damaged. It's communities being damaged. And there's no justification for it. And if all you people want to care about black men, hell, let's start caring about people in general. Let's start caring about the mental health issues that we have as a country and that we're causing. And I want to go to kind of a cool-off story, but there's some tangential, because I'm still not ever going to be a back the police person. Because look at this. This happened. Sometimes I come across stories when I'm doing research for other stories. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to cover that. I'm going to toss that in. And I figured this would be a good cool down story from that. But look at this. And of course, the race, people are going to say something about that. But Ohio football mom tased and arrested for not wearing a mask at a game. I feel like I may have tangentially heard about this, but the whole point is, the first quarter of the game, she was approached by an officer because she wasn't wearing a mask. Not going to show the video. The woman who shot the above video said she had been warned for not wearing a mask prior to the officer approaching her. She also said that kids had asthma. That's why she wasn't wearing a mask. There's no reason for someone to be tased and arrested for not wearing a mask. I agree. This is why I just don't want to just give police power. And this is a great comment. I'm going to get into it. Actually, let's show it. Where is it? Because there's all these stupid comments. And they're talking about Sue, and it's like, oh, this been a white cop, black female be riots. And then this person, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. I don't know who you are, but God bless you. Oh, but why is this different, everyone? Back to blue. Just comply. If they're arresting you, you must have done something wrong. We expect our officers to use force. Stop sugarcoating things. If the races will be flipped, it will easily be everyone saying thug or just comply. Clearly, what we don't see in the video is the woman refusing to put on a mask and leave. And then if it's a real cop, what you meant to ask is, can we please get a white cop? Lawsuit my ass. The title should read Okay, now I'm talking about the loud. So there was some wokeness in this, and I guess it didn't say anything about the race. But I just want to point out the issue with Back to Blue. That was my main point. And I'm not somebody who wants to give governments more power, and I'm very worried about an authoritarian fallout from all these riots. And there's this, everyone wear a mask, and I'm wearing a mask, obviously, but that's not the type of mask they're talking about. Everyone wear a mask. Ironically, some of the same people who want to defund the police want more mask requirements and want more laws and impacting on liberty. This is why mask requirements are an issue. Because you can be tased for mask requirements. Because you give the police more authority to do more damage. That's why I'm like, justified killing. Yeah, I think they got the right to defend themselves. But that we don't have other services for mental health, put them in situations where they have to make these determinations. I'd rather we have less reason to call police in general. So, I mean, maybe that's maybe people don't understand how those could go together, how you could be critical of Black Lives Matter and the riots, but then be critical of police in general. But I came across that and said, that's why you can't just have a one-way opinion. I mean, I don't think every opinion needs nuance. Because there's even a situation I didn't really cover. I was doing research for the Jonathan Price situation I didn't even hear about, where I guess he was a Back to Blue guy, and he ended up getting killed by the police. So it's like, I'm not really a fan of that. I've had my bad experiences with them. I don't think they should be defunded. I think that's crazy. But I don't think that's the answer. I just think police need more resources to deal with mentally ill individuals.